Hey there, everybody. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist, and welcome back to my channel. Those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. And on my channel, I like to dig into what I consider to be the heart of writing, the characters. And the heart of the characters is in their psychology. So that is the basis of what we talk about, that the psychology behind writing, behind world building, behind character building, all that stuff, because that's how you develop a well-rounded world. So for today's video, I am still catching up from last week because my computer was down. So I think it's appropriate because starting this Saturday, I believe it's going to be Saturday, it might be Sunday, but I'm going to aim for Saturday. I'm going to start my series on the types of magic. I gave you guys an overview video last week over the types we're going to be talking about. So I thought we'd talk a little more on magic this week, or more specifically, what are some rules I follow when I'm making a magic system? Okay, so first and foremost, magic is fun, and it's meant to be fun, and you can do your system any way you like. These are just some tips that I have found useful when I'm working with magic in a story. Because as fun as magic is in a story, it can also make things complicated real quick. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. As always, I always want to hear about what your guys' versions, your guys' ideas on these kind of topics are. So make sure you leave them below so we can have a conversation. So first rule I go by when making a magic system: don't figure out what your magic can do, figure out what it can't do. I think a lot of times when people are starting to develop their magic system, they're developing ways that the magic will be involved in the plot, the things it'll do for the hero, the situations it can help the hero out of, and all those kinds of things. And that's a great way to approach it. But I find if you approach it that way solely, you tend to overpower your magic system. Because let's face it, magic to get someone out of a jam is easy. It's simple, you don't have to think too much about it. And while it can let you be very creative, and I'm all for that, I think it also doesn't have as many limits as you need to have in a system. Because magic, kind of like anything, it needs limits. If it can do anything, why is there even a conflict? So my first rule when I make a magic system is figure out what can magic not do. For instance, I'll give you guys an example from my work in progress. The magic system, I have two magic systems, but the magic system of the Natu, it cannot heal. It does not have the ability to heal. And the reason for that is I don't necessarily tell you guys right off the bat if it's because it can't or if it's because it's considered unnatural. But either way, it's a limitation, and it's one that every single character abides by. So that's one example. It cannot be used to heal. The other limitation I have for it, the major one, is going to come up in a later point, so I'll address that later. The magic system and what I call the amulet system, which is what the stonemen use, which is essentially a metal that is made into an amulet or a wristband or something they have to have for magic to work. It is drawn from a finite source. There's only so much of it. So if you're using, or if you're trying to use your magic and there are a lot of other people trying to use it at the same time, you're not going to be able to do as much, and it's not going to be as potent. Kind of think of it as if a ton of people are jumping on your Wi-Fi. It doesn't work as well. Same kind of idea. Next point when it comes to making a magic system, I'm going to go with what is the cost of magic? in that there should be something that characters have to give up or suffer when they use magic. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be this horrific thing, because otherwise nobody would ever use magic. But if you think about it, when you go running, like let's say you run a marathon, what do you give up when you run a marathon? Your muscles are going to hurt, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be tired. The next day, you're probably not going to want to move at all. You have to watch what you eat as you're running. You can't just chow down on anything. Those are all costs. And I think when people think of a cost system when they're coming up with magic, they're thinking of the big cost, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but little costs are just as important. And I think that those are much more realistic. So in my work in progress, magic is just like any other activity in that it draws energy. It takes energy to do. So if you're gonna cast small little spells, it's gonna kind of wear you out a little bit. But if you're talking about a big spell, it can land you flat on your back, and in some cases, it could kill you. So it's not something that's used lightly, and it's not something that that you can do continuously. Because I think that can become a problem, especially if you're having battles and stuff in your story. Is a lot of times, I know as a reader, sometimes I will ask, why didn't said person use magic in here when I know they can use it? If you come up with a reason why they can't use it all the time, then you can kind of avoid that situation. Right. Third point, accessibility. Who can use it? Who can't use it? And this doesn't necessarily mean, well, only people of this race can use it. Only people of, with this color eyes can use it, or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about who's allowed to use it, who's trained to use it. In some cases, you have people that are naturally talented with it, and so they take to it right away. I'm not a fan of that, mainly because, kind of like with anything in life, it's very rare that you pick up something and you're automatically an expert at it. Very rarely happens. When it does happen, yeah, it's notable, and that's fine. But if it's happening all the time, I don't know, it feels lazy to me when that happens. So I want to know, how do people learn magic? Are they trained in it? Is there professional trainers? Is it something they just do at home? Is it something that they get better at the longer they do it, or is it something that they get better at naturally as they get older? What are the requirements? Because that can add a little bit of spunk to your magic system, and I think that's fun. Let's see, another point. What are the rules on magic in your world? And I don't mean what I've been talking about, limitations and stuff. I'm talking about, is there rules in your governments regarding magic? Because if magic is something that almost everybody can use, or a vast majority can use, it is going to affect your economy. It is going to affect your religion. It's going to affect travel. There's going to be all kinds of things that are affected by this. And whenever that happens, you got laws, you got rules. So, like for instance, not in my current work in progress, but in a work I've done in the past, there were rules about who could travel where using magic. You couldn't just use magic to travel anywhere. You had credentials. Okay, here's my credentials. I'm allowed to travel to XYZ using magic. And it's kind of like a passport. And that was commonplace because lots of people knew magic. Not everybody, but lots of people knew magic. So that's just something to consider. What is the impact that magic has on your world as a whole? And what are some laws that are going to crop up because of it? All right, last point, and I save this one for last because I'm kind of touch and go with this one. I don't necessarily think it's super important, but I think it's important to bring up. I personally don't think that a soft or hard magic system is really what you should be thinking about. I think more what you should be thinking about is the things I've already mentioned, and the type of system you're going after will kind of emerge on its own. Um, I know sometimes people go into, fantasy thinking, okay, I need to make a hard magic system, or they go into sci-fi, I have to make a hard magic system. I don't want soft. I don't want the. I don't think that's necessarily as important. Um, I think it's more important to look at, okay, does is this system doing what I want it to do? Do I have limitations on it? Have I explained the things I need to explain? And I phrase it like that because it's okay to leave some things mysterious. Even if you're doing a hard magic system, it's okay to leave some things unexplained and mysterious because that's the very nature of magic, is it's mysterious. So if you don't want to talk about where the magic comes from, that's fine. Um, just be aware people are probably going to ask you, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to explain it. But I just think being aware of there's going to be a lot of different questions and things that crop up as you create your system, and it's going to take a couple of tries to get it right. I think that's something to keep in mind too, is as you do your rewrites and your drafts, you're going to refine and change your magic system. And if I can offer any advice, once you get it to how you want it, write it down. um, because it can be very easy to kind of get lost in the details, so to speak, and then you go back and you think, well, what did I say about this? I don't remember. I know I mentioned it, but I don't remember it. And I say this whether you're a plotter, a pantser, or a planter, you don't have to write it down in detail. Just jot down the important stuff so that you have something to reference when you're writing, because that is a huge help. So that is just my little video on just some tips I have for writing magic systems. As always, you guys are always welcome to write your own. I want to hear about how you write your own. Make sure you comment below because I want to have a discussion about that because this is a fun topic. If you guys find this kind of stuff interesting, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss when I upload. I'll be doing double videos this week to make up for the ones I missed last week. So I will see you guys again on Thursday and Sunday, and we will get into the individual types of magic starting this Saturday. So I will see you guys then.